Hello and welcome to the D-Tools What's the Buzz podcast. I'm Jason Knott, Data Solutions Architect at D-Tools, and with me as always is Tim Bagonis, Chief Marketing Officer at D-Tools. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Jason. How you doing? Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Fall is finally upon us. The leaves are falling like crazy. It's the scary and spooky time of the year with Halloween coming up, which I know is one of your favorite times of the year.
Yes. I love Halloween. My family loves Halloween. We watch our shows and movies together every year. And my personal favorite is It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Always a classic. Great and easy, pro tip, easy Halloween costume. Just take the sheet and be Charlie Brown and have trouble with the scissors where there's holes everywhere. Wore that one time to a Halloween party and they didn't get the reference. Everybody thought I was the Holy Ghost. So there you go. Anyway, speaking of things that are scary, me in a Halloween costume, there's a lot of integrators out there confronting the frightening situation of finding quality people, quality technicians for their team. The labor shortage in our industry has become obviously an ongoing dilemma. It's hurting integrators' ability to grow, to scale. And we have I'm excited about our guest today, because joining us today is someone who, is a personal friend. We served on the Azion board together. Chris Smith, principal of the Co-Team. Chris has some great insight into this specific topic. And, I'd like to welcome him in. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
And thanks for having me, Jason. Thanks as well.
One of the cool things about our podcast that I think, at least anyway, I think it's cool, is that we try and use this as a time to kind of reconnect with our friends in the industry, in between trade shows, in between events. We only get to see each other a few times a year. So we always like to get into a little bit of your backstory, or the backstory about how you got into this business and how you came to fund the Co-Team.
Should we go all the way back to the first time in the industry part? You want to go way
we try
back?
And keep these things to 20 minutes. So touch on these things, but, tell us about your background. How did you get here?
Yeah, I was working at a tool store actually. And these two guys came into a tool store one day and they were splitting off of another AV company and starting their own business. And one of the guys at the counter said, "Oh, you probably want to talk to Chris. He's into that kind of stuff." And I got to meet these guys and they're like, "Yeah, we're opening up this shop. Come on by, take a look at what we're doing." And I came in there and they sat me down in front of this just astoundingly amazing hi-fi system. I mean, it had to have been $50,000, $60,000 worth of stuff. And I go, "I can't afford any of that." And they go, "We didn't ask you to buy it. We just said we want you to hear it." And I sat down in front of it and my jaw hit the floor. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, this is what I want to do every day. This is amazing. And so I said, "Do you guys have any jobs?" And they're like, "No, man, we're poor. We can barely afford to pay ourselves." And I'm like, okay, so that's probably not the place you want to get a job at the moment. Jump ahead to a year later and they call me up and they go, "Hey, do you remember you talked to us about that job? Like, we're ready to hire people. We'd love to hire you." And I was like, that's amazing. And so I started literally pulling wires and, installing systems and crawling through attic spaces. And I learned how to program things and project manage things. And before you knew it, I was selling things. And we were working in a pretty high rent area of California in Santa Barbara. And so we're working in Montecito and all these really beautiful homes. And so I just got this love for kind of this industry and all the stuff that we were doing. And then it afforded me an opportunity to go work for Bowers and Wilkins for 5 years, which I did. And then that led into 5 years at Macintosh. And then I came back to the integrator side to work for a company that's been since sold called Cloud9 Smart, purchased by eHome in New Jersey. And I was running that integration firm. It was a really interesting kind of way to take the two vendor relationships that I had in seeing integrators and dealers every day, what they were doing well, some things I thought what they might not be doing well, and said, how do I put all this into practice in an integration company? And we actually deployed all of those ideas and scaled and grew an integration company. We fundamentally changed what we were doing in revenue and net profit. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I wasn't an equity partner in the business at the time, and I didn't think that was a likelihood of happening with COVID on the horizon and happening. And so I started to start my own company. Wasn't actually the intent. I literally left my job on a Friday, not knowing what I was going to do, and just said, well, if my brain's free to think about it, maybe I'll come up with an interesting idea. There weren't a lot of people hiring at the time of COVID. I didn't think I was going to get a vendor job or an integrator job. And so by Monday, I had developed a business plan. And that business plan was around coaching and consulting. And the very short part of that is I then launched it. And within 75 days, I'd hit my minimum viable product and said, maybe this is just what I do now. What actually happened was we started with coaching and consulting. So we were helping businesses run better businesses. But two questions kept coming out of those discussions. And the first question was, I would achieve my business goals as a business owner, but I can't find the people I need. And the second was, I have somebody inside of my organization I would fire yesterday if I could just find a better person, but I can't find that person. I feel stuck with this person. And I said, so if we could help you on this people side of things, that would make your life better. You get to your goals. And they said, yeah. I was like, amazing. Well, what if we solved that at a consulting level? What if we solved that at an hourly level? And what it turned into was just working alongside the same integrators we've been working with and helping them find really amazing people. And the feedback kept coming back from our integration clients that they just loved it. And so it's now what we do full time.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great story. And, working for those two iconic brands, if you love audio, I mean, I couldn't ask for a better experience.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was working for Joe Atkins at Bowers and Wilkins was a master class in business practice. I mean, the team that he had assembled there, we were, a ragtag team of knuckleheads out there, probably drinking too much, but it was amazing. And what we learned about businesses was how to actually be an amazing business partner. So it wasn't about the product, although we thought we made great products and speakers and we had a great time with music and all that kind of thing. But what I really learned was all of our clients were these business people, and there was nothing but knowledge and understanding about if we can really dovetail into their business in the right way, we become this amazing partner. And so that's what we did. And then working for Macintosh, I mean, Charlie, talk about another legend, super great guy, and was really, really welcoming. And when we went through the process of actually Macintosh being sold into Fine Sounds, that's actually when I became really integral into the sell side team and in the process of actually going through the purchase into the Fine Sounds group. And it really kind of shed a whole different perspective on the backside fundamentals of that business. And that was also really interesting. So then when I was able to kind of roll all those things up and take them over into the integrator space, it was like I had kind of like seen these different playbooks, and I got to pick my best parts and pieces from the playbooks and say, if I could build my best amalgamated version, what would it look like? And then we got to do all that at Cloud9 Smart, and it was awesome. Super great team, really lovely people. And then what we did for clients and like the happiness that we brought, it was a way to kind of bring it full circle again from what I remember from my days when we did it advanced audio in Santa Barbara. It was really cool.
No, that's awesome.
All right, let's bring some happiness to our listeners here and talk about this topic of digging into finding labor. So I know this is kind of a 30,000 foot view question, but where should integrators be looking for talent in the first place?
Yes. Is like the answer. So the first part is you want to go where the eyeballs are. And I think one of the easiest takeaways is that the eyeballs are on Indeed. Whether you like it or don't like it, 75% of the applicants that we see and the hires that we make come from Indeed paid ads, not Indeed organic ads. And so imagine the Google search idea, right? If you wanted to be putting your ads somewhere, you want to be where the eyeballs go. So what that tells you is that 25% come from all the other places. Well, what are those other places? And the answer is Indeed non-paid, ZipRecruiter, Monster, Talent, LinkedIn, those types of things. And so what you realize is that if you're not on Indeed paid ads, you're getting 1/4 the number of people that you should be talking to. And so this isn't a question about whether I like the platform, don't like the platform, think it's great, don't think it's great. You got to go fishing in the hole where all the fish are. And that's where we go.
So the days of hanging out at the distribution counter and waiting for the technicians to roll in, those are long gone, or does that still work?
I'm not saying it can't work, and let's call this an and strategy rather than an or strategy. I think referrals, an amazing way to find talent. No reason why you should not be doing that. The problem is that is it's like putting up a yard sale sign at the end of the corner, right? Like there's just only so many people that see that. And then I think the other places that you start to think about are recruitment agencies. Like that is absolutely an option. You can go that way. What you're doing then is you're in an asymmetrical position. And, when we first started this business, we actually tried it a little bit that way. And what we found was that the hit rate was so astonishingly low because you're approaching people when they're not looking to be approached. And so now you have to start to kind of really convince them and think differently about why they should even engage in the conversation in the first place. You start to realize just how kind of at a disadvantage you are in that process for all sorts of reasons. But fundamentally, I think your best shot is really making sure you've got great visibility. So let's go look where the eyes are. This question comes up sometimes about, well, what about, say, LinkedIn or something like that? And the answer is it depends on the position. So when we start to talk about most roles that an integrator will hire for, Indeed is the best platform because that's really where those people are visible. If we were looking for different types of industries, LinkedIn might make a lot of sense. We actually did some hiring for a company that did fashion and apparel, and we were looking for a sales manager. LinkedIn was exactly where we needed to be. And so I think it really matters on who you're searching for and why, and just making sure you're picking the right place for visibility.
Good advice. So what are some of the common labor and hiring problems that you encounter when you're talking to the various integration companies out there?
I mean, let's start with the first one, which is the messaging. So if you really think about the way that businesses are messaging out, it is usually the job post, right? And some people confuse the job post with a job description. A job description is an HR document. A job description is something you use internally for kind of accountability and things. Imagine if Coca-Cola went out and on their can, it said, gives you diabetes. Like how many people would be buying Coca-Cola, right? And so the whole point isn't about, just telling somebody something factual. In fact, the question really is, what does it mean to the applicant? And so as you actually start to look at this, what you realize is that most job descriptions that are being posted are actually converting from a JD to a job post without any change or edit. And you go, oh, this is entirely for the hiring company. It has nothing to do with the applicant in mind. So we need to make this something that feels like a marketing exercise. It needs to be an exhibition about the role and what it means to the applicant. The other part is that it needs to have radical transparency about, what does it pay and what are my benefits and how many days off do I get and all those things. Why? Because that's what matters to the applicant. And so I think when you look at it, you could literally just drag your mouse over and say, do a word count of a job post and say how much of it is for the company and how much of it is the stuff that the applicant wants to know. And what you'd find is that almost always that ratio is off in favor of the company. And so it's not surprising then that they're not getting traction around that kind of thing. So there's one big one. Another one would be price. Like what are we actually posting for a job range? It actually doesn't matter what you pay your current people. It matters what the market is showing for people like it. And so one of the things we always suggest to people is you can go right on Indeed yourself. You can type in the title you want. You can type in your zip code. You can set it within 25 miles, 35 miles, whatever the reasonable drive time range would be for that given job. And then you can say, only show me jobs with pay. And you can look right there and you can see exactly what the market is bearing. And you better be at that or better, or your current people are going to leave, not get the new people you want to have. And so we actually suggest taking that kind of data and analytical approach, right? It's the right forward looking rather than rearward looking, because the rearward won't help you.
So at the technician level, how can an integrator, your story about listening to that demo with those two dudes who, years ago when you were working, before you were in the industry, you were able to translate the excitement and the coolness of being in this industry to wanting to be in the industry. How do you do that? Or how can an integrator do that when he's looking for a technician and he's posting a job on Indeed? Is there some sort of tip or trick to really show people the excitement of being in this business?
I think the first part is show humanity. Like, well, I agree with the excitement part. Like that sounds like a nice bar, but how about like humanity? And the first step is don't use ChatGPT to write it. And if you do, it needs to feel soft touch, not mechanical. And so make sure that output feels like a human wrote it. That's number one. Number two, show me who you are as a business. So one of my favorite things to do is core values. So if you look on our website, our core values are there. If you look inside of all of our training documents, our core values are there. When we post up jobs, the core values are there. And the first thing that does is allows an opt-in culture for the applicant to say, that's who I am. That's what I want to be. That's who I want to represent. That sounds great. Now imagine that compared to all the other jobs that don't. So immediately you stand apart, and that core value brings some humanity to it. So the other way that I would be thinking about this in a very simplified way, do you have an About Us section on your website that shows who the members of your team are and a bit about them? What that imagines, it allows somebody to do is to imagine that they're a part of that. Like, I want my picture on that thing. I want my little bio right there. I want to be sitting next to all of these people. Like, yeah, that's for me. And I think if we can create an opt-in culture where things feel like they're for the applicant, immediately it makes it kind of that aha moment for them. So it might not be about the tech per se. It might be about the team. And I think that right there means a lot, because that's actually what you're looking for, is a great team member, not just a great technologist. There are plenty of great technologists who are horrible human beings, right? And we don't want any of those people, right? We absolutely want the great team member, and we'll teach them the stuff they don't know.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. So do integrators hurt themselves trying with this analysis paralysis, so to speak, of trying to find the perfect ideal candidate? And it kind of leads into a second part of it is, are they better off finding somebody who's green to the industry and teaching them the industry versus seeking an experienced person?
It's a really great question, right? And I don't want to just oversimplify and say it's only this or it's only that. But here's what I do want to be thinking about. If we only look at the top side of a pyramid, there's only so many people that we can talk to. What happens if the one or two people that fit that tiny criteria aren't the right people, don't have the right work history, they're not loyal, they move around a lot, they've got bad attitudes, whatever the answer is. So if you happen to get lucky and the top side of that pyramid is somebody who's got a great attitude and doesn't move around a lot and is within your budget and does live within your zip code and ... amazing, like fantastic. I would never say no to that. But what I'll tell you is there's not many of those fish jumping in the boat. So now what we got to do is we got to start thinking about, well, where else can we look? And so as you think about that pyramid analogy, as you go down the pyramid in technical, maybe I do find the person who's a fantastic team player, has a great disposition, wonderful emotional intelligence, so they get along well with my team, super humble, so they're really, really great to work with. Well, now, if that person shows any amount of aptitude, what could I teach them? Any day, I'd rather take that mathematical approach than the other. And so an example of that would be like, let's say they come from managed services and they know how to do CCNA. It's a 900-page course book. Well, you don't think I can teach that guy Lutron in 4 days? You don't think I can teach that guy Savant in 4 days? Like, that's what those on-site classes are. That guy did 900 pages of networks. Yes, I want to find the right human who's got that technical background, and I will teach him all the other stuff. On the other hand, you've got a project coming to a deadline and you need a human right now. You don't have the time to train a CCNA guy on all the other things he doesn't know. And so I think, this question is really about making sure you're looking ahead in your hiring process so that you never feel like you're behind that curve. And therefore now you're in this requirement where it can only be the top side of that pyramid. And now if we can't find it, we're in trouble. So that's probably my advice there.
Let me back up one step. Let's say you've identified the applicants that come in. What does the hiring process ideally look like right now? Is it multiple interviews? Is it a hands-on test training? I'm thinking technician level here. And are we in the mode economy wise now where if you don't jump quickly, you're going to lose a good candidate? Give me a sense of what that process looks like right now.
So I'll answer the process question second. Let's answer your last question first, which is, if we don't move quickly, are we going to lose an applicant? And the answer is yes. Like all things aside, yes. You better have a process. It better be in writing, and it better be highly efficient and respectful of the applicant's time. If you're doing 4 rounds of interviews for anything, something's gone terribly wrong. Like our interview process needs to shift around a little bit. Like, this is broken. I think about it from the applicant's perspective. Like this should be efficient and effective, and it should feel respectful of my time. So take a look through that lens. If the answer is it feels less than that, make some adjustments wherever necessary. So now let's go talk about what we think a process looks like. We think the first step is you got to post something. Second step is you have to have a resume review process. Who's doing that? Someone needs to sit down and be reviewing those resumes regularly, and you need to know what they're really looking for. Because what we're not looking for is that dead nut center of the dartboard. What we're really looking for is 2 or 3 rings out. So whoever's reviewing the resume has to know what the likelihood of a person being in 2 or 3 rings out looks like. And in fact, when this task is handed to most people, if it's a large enough organization, it's handed to an HR person who doesn't know any of those things, right? Technically about those respective roles. If it's handed just to the head of a technician department or the head of a project management department, they're thinking specifically, I want the dead nut center of the dartboard. And then they're rejecting all these other people that could actually ring the bell for them. So resume review, super crucial. That's actually the first place where most people are throwing gold back into the river, right? They've gone in there, they put their pan in, they're looking, they're like, yeah, no, not this one. And we're like, no, that one right there. Like you should talk to that person a little bit. You can choose not to hire them, but don't not talk to them. And so I think that process of resume review is really crucial. Next, we need to automate the process of getting them into a first round interview. Someone needs to validate very quickly that this person fits our cultural values, make sure that they're hungry, humble, and smart from Patrick Lencioni's book, which talks about, people being ambitious, down to earth, and emotionally intelligent. Those are the humans we hire for. If you don't hit that criteria, I don't care how good your technical is. You're not a part of this team. Once we do that first round of interview, we should be sussing out enough to know, are they really ready for an in-person interview? And in fact, if you look at a funnel and say, well, what is it from applicant volume to that pre-interview phase to in-person? 2 to 3%. So now at that 2 to 3%, that's now all we have to bring in for in-persons. So when we do an in-person, we suggest this method called AD Player. It's written by this guy named Eric Herrenkahl. I saw him do a presentation once, and I immediately took it back to my business and started implementing that in our integration company. And so it's a method whereby you have a standard for how you interview for every position. And it's very easy to do. It's not complicated, but it provides a baseline for how we interview humans. You can take any 2 humans who know how to read and teach them how to do it. It's that easy. And so that method really helps build your hiring process. And then from there, now we need some way to say, do we do reference checks? The answer should be yes, right? Like we absolutely should be doing a reference check on somebody. Well, who's going to do that? What questions do they ask? Now we start talking about the idea of like, should we have a field trial day? Well, so field trial could also be an office trial. So if it's an accounting person, it'd be in an office. If it's a project manager, it's probably in the field. Are we putting that person and shadowing them with somebody on our team? And do we pay them as a 1099 for that period of their work so that we can really validate who they are before we extend an offer? And that's a really great idea because under that criteria, you're then not liable for unemployment insurance if you fire them. So like now you start thinking about the hedge that you're making and you go, this is like a really cool hedge to do that. I'll give credit to Serge at Craftsman in New Jersey. He had one of the best technician tests ever. So you got a little box on his desk and he pours the box out and it's a tape measure. And then he's got some crimping tools and some wire. And he goes, measure this desk. There's one answer to that question. There's not like a different answer to the measure the desk question. And if you can't do it, you're probably not meant to be a technician, right? And next he goes, great, find the stuff to terminate a category table in this box and do it. And here's like, there's testers and all sorts of other stuff in this box, right? Like test it. If you can't do that, you probably don't need to be a technician here. And so talk about such a simple idea. I don't even have to take the guy into the field to do it. I'm like sitting right here and I know. And so these are like the small little things that were great. And so I think having that methodology, then we start talking about offer letter. Just have a good one, have somebody read it. It should, when I got my last job offer at Cloud9 Smart, the title said, are you prepared to come and work at the greatest company ever? Like that was the opening line of it. And I started chuckling. I was like, this is awesome, right? So somebody really thought through the humanity of that document. It wasn't a legal document, which made me question it. Now let's say they say yes to all that. Most people think that's where the hiring process stops. Once they start, what's the 30, 60, 90-day plan to make sure they're sticky? What's the training for the next 30 days, every 30 minutes that person is running through so that they know what's expected of them? Bring in the AV player from that in-person interview so that they know the standards you're holding them to and what they did well and didn't during the interview. And then now what's their training track and curriculum so that they know what they're doing every day. I see a lot of people work all the way through to that hiring side and then lose people in the first 30, 60, 90 days because they don't onboard well. And you go, now we're just redoing the process again. Like, what? Why do that? And so I think it's a very interesting kind of discussion about, do you know that methodology? Is it down on paper? When something isn't going well, do you see where the holes in the bucket are?
Once you get to that point without a proper onboarding plan, you're just going to have the turnaround so quickly, and then it just becomes just a revolving door. And I think a lot of companies, may not think about that.
They don't, and it's true. So I brought in an employee recently. His name's Chad Niederman. And when Chad started on day one, we had a whole onboarding track. And he literally methodically went through each part and piece. And then there was a process of where he shadowed us, and then I shadowed him, and then he did it himself, bit by bit, building up the person to the finish line of where you want them. And then boom, they're in flight and they're doing great. And he sat down and he said, I've never seen anything like this. And I think it's not complicated to do. It's not hard, just a little tedious. It takes a little time. But I think the idea that if you really think that through, now you've actually, the investment that you made to get that person in your door, oh my gosh, it's like the best insurance policy ever, that onboarding plan.
Yeah. So to that point, so everybody's busy, right? And most of these integrators are, they're swamped. They got the projects. They need someone now. How do you help them see that piece of it? How do you help them get started to even think about what a 90-day plan or a 30-day or a 60-day plan is? Are there little baby steps that they can take to at least get started so they start thinking about it without it, taking 2 weeks of their time or whatever it might take?
Yeah, it's, I think I built Chad's onboarding plan in 8 hours. So if you really think about that, would an 8-hour investment for a 90-day stretch feel like a worthwhile thing to do? Now, the next question could be, well, I don't have the 8 hours. Can I delegate it to somebody on my team to do? Now, the next question is, I don't have 8 hours on anybody on my team. Can I outsource it to a company like ours or anybody else's to help me get there? And so I think it doesn't have to always be done as a lift by the individual. It could be outsourced if needed.
All right. We're just scratching the surface here. This has been unbelievable information. And, but we know that you can, as at the Code team, provide even more information for your clients. How can integrators get in touch with you, Chris, if they need to?
Yeah, 100%. So you go to thecodeteam.com. I think you can see it right here in the video. If you go to thecodeteam.com, you'll see all of our services there, but there's also a way you can just book a meeting. And when you book a meeting, we can sit down and actually walk you through that process and workflow and how we do it, the software tools we use to support it, and make sure that, it feels like it's the right kind of thing for you if that's what you were interested in.
Awesome. Tim, any final thoughts?
No, this has been great information, Chris. And, we appreciate you coming and spending some time with us. And we look forward to, having you on again and further into discussion.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, guys, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the podcast, either on Apple or Spotify or whatever your streaming platform is, or you can watch us on the D-Tools, the YouTube channel. And we will see you on the next edition of the D-Tools What's the Buzz podcast.